You have no right. Why is a black rat like you dragging me into the dark as if I were one of your kind?
Theodore Callahan, $4.2 billion to his name, spat those words at the black maid who had just yanked him into a closet at 2 in the morning. Priscilla Irving pressed her damp hand over his mouth. He shoved her backward, wiping his lips in disgust.
You lured me in here to rob me, didn't you? Answer me!
She stayed silent, eyes locked on the door. Then, footsteps. 3 men in black masks passed the closet, suppressed pistols raised. They had come to kill him. The only thing between Theodore Callahan and a bullet was the woman he had just called a black rat. What happened in that closet over the next 6 minutes would change both their lives forever. 6 hours before that closet door closed, the Callahan estate stood the way it always did, like a kingdom that had forgotten the world outside its walls. 14,000 square feet of hand-cut limestone perched on the Hamptons coastline, overlooking the Atlantic through floor-to-ceiling glass that cost more than most people's homes. 22 staff members operated the property in rotating shifts: gardeners, cooks, drivers, security, each one trained to move through the house without being seen or heard. The estate did not run on electricity. It ran on invisibility. The people who kept it beautiful were never supposed to be noticed.
By noon, his private mechanics had arrived.
At the top of that invisible hierarchy sat Theodore Callahan, 60 years old, widowed 5 years, a man who had built a real estate empire from nothing, bought his first condemned building at 23, flipped it in 4 months, and never stopped. By 40, he owned half of downtown Boston. By 50, he had towers in 6 countries. By 60, he had everything a man could want and no one left to share it with. His wife, Eleanor, had died of pancreatic cancer. Fast, brutal, 16 weeks from diagnosis to funeral. Theodore held her hand the night she passed, and something inside him locked shut. He stopped attending galas, stopped returning calls from old friends, stopped looking people in the eye. He kept the estate fully staffed, not for comfort, but for distance. 22 people surrounded him every day, and he had not had a real conversation with any of them in 3 years. He had one habit no one understood. Every night between 1:30 and 2:30 in the morning, Theodore walked the halls of his own house alone. No lights, no phone, just his slippers on cold marble and the sound of the ocean through the walls. The staff called it his ghost walk. No one knew why he did it. No one asked. At the bottom of that hierarchy, below the gardeners, below the kitchen staff, below even the part-time dog walker, was Priscilla Irving. 36 years old, black, quiet in a way that made people forget she had a voice at all. She had worked the night shift at the estate for 2 years, mopping, scrubbing, laundering, polishing silver that other people's hands would touch in the morning. She started at 10 p.m. She finished at 6 a.m. She ate alone in the basement utility room, slept in a narrow bed behind the boiler, and spoke only when spoken to. No one knew where she came from. No one asked.
27 rare cars. Bugattis, Ferraris, McLarens, Rolls-Royces.
In a house that ran on invisibility, Priscilla was the most invisible of all. But if anyone had looked, truly looked, they would have noticed things that did not belong to a cleaning woman. The way she entered a room, back against the doorframe, eyes sweeping left to right before stepping forward. The way she walked, light, deliberate, weight on the balls of her feet, never letting her heels strike the floor. The way she stood still, shoulders squared, chin level, hands loose at her sides. Not the posture of someone who scrubs toilets, but of someone who had been trained to move through spaces where a single sound could get you killed. And there was the watch. A battered military-issue field watch strapped to her left wrist. Scratched crystal, faded olive drab strap worn soft as skin. She never took it off, not to wash dishes, not to scrub grout, not to sleep. Gregory Ashford, the head butler, had mocked it once in front of the entire kitchen staff. "That cheap little thing suits you perfectly, Irving. Both worn out and worthless." Everyone laughed. Priscilla said nothing. She touched the watch face with her thumb, a gesture so small, so private, that no one noticed. It was the same way a soldier touches a medal before walking into fire. Gregory Ashford, 50 years old. Silver hair combed to perfection. Three-piece suit pressed to a razor crease every morning by 6. He ran the Callahan estate the way a warden runs a prison, with absolute authority and selective cruelty. To the white staff, he was firm but fair. To Priscilla, he was something else entirely. He never used her first name. It was always Irving, spoken the way you would say a stain on the carpet. He assigned her the jobs no one wanted: the guest bathrooms after parties, the garbage detail in the rain, the silver polishing that took 4 hours and earned no thanks. If she finished early, he found more. If she finished late, he docked her pay. And then there was Spencer Callahan.
In the heart of Billionaire, beyond iron gates taller than most dreams, stood the Langston estate.
Theodore's nephew, 32. Tailored suits, Italian loafers, a jaw built for magazine covers, and a soul built for nothing. He visited the estate every 2 weeks, always with a smile for his uncle, always with a request he dressed up as concern. "Just checking on you, Uncle Ted." But his eyes always drifted to the paintings on the walls, the silver in the cabinets, the safe in Theodore's study. Spencer owed gambling debts in 7 figures. He needed his uncle's fortune. He needed it soon. And late at night, when the house slept, Gregory Ashford made phone calls in the garden. Voice low, words careful, one hand cupped over the phone. Priscilla had heard fragments while mopping the terrace doors. She did not listen closely. She had learned long ago that other people's secrets were not worth the trouble. She was wrong about that. The first time Gregory Ashford publicly humiliated Priscilla Irving, it was over a bracelet she had never touched. A Thursday morning, a VIP guest, one of Spencer's socialite friends, reported a diamond tennis bracelet missing from the guest suite, valued at $40,000. Gregory did not check the security cameras. He did not search the room. He walked straight to the basement, found Priscilla folding towels, and said 3 words: "Empty your pockets." She stood. She emptied them. A crumpled tissue, a rubber band, nothing else. "Your bag," he said. She opened it. Toothbrush, a change of clothes, a paperback novel with a broken spine. "Your room." He tore through her space. The narrow bed, the single shelf, the cardboard box she used as a nightstand, while 2 other staff members watched from the doorway. He found nothing, because there was nothing to find. The bracelet turned up 3 hours later, wedged between the sofa cushions in the guest suite. The socialite laughed about it over brunch. "Silly me." Gregory never apologized. He never acknowledged the search had happened. The only thing he said to Priscilla that afternoon, passing her in the hallway without breaking stride, was, "Next time, Irving, you might not be so lucky." Priscilla's hands trembled as she picked up her mop. Not from fear, from the effort it took to keep her fingers from closing into fists. She pressed her thumb against the watch crystal, held it there for 3 seconds, and went back to work. The second humiliation was worse, because it had an audience. Spencer Callahan hosted a dinner at the estate. 12 guests, all old money,
By evening, so had Lamborghini-certified specialists.
all dressed in fabrics that cost more per yard than Priscilla earned in a week. Theodore sat at the head of the table, silent as always, cutting his steak with surgical precision while conversation floated around him like smoke he refused to breathe. Priscilla was assigned to pour the wine. She moved along the table, steady, invisible, efficient, until she reached the chair of a woman in a pearl choker who gestured too wide with her glass. Red Bordeaux arced through the air and hit the Persian rug beneath the table. $80,000 of hand-knotted silk, stained crimson in an instant. The room went quiet. Gregory was behind Priscilla in 3 steps. His voice carried the precise volume of a man who wanted everyone to hear. "Irving, on your knees, now." She looked at him. "I said kneel. Clean it with your hands. I will not waste a clean towel on your mistake." 12 faces turned toward her, not one with sympathy. One man, Spencer's banker friend, leaned back in his chair, swirling his own glass. "At least she knows her place," he said. A woman beside him laughed behind her napkin. Priscilla knelt. She pressed her bare palms into the rug. Bordeaux soaked through her skin, warm, seeping into the creases of her knuckles, running beneath her fingernails. The wine was the color of something she did not want to name. She scrubbed in slow circles, face down, while the sound of resumed conversation and clinking crystal drifted above her like weather happening in someone else's world. No one helped. No one looked down. She was furniture again, a stain cleaning a stain. But there was one pair of eyes on her. Theodore Callahan watched from the head of the table. He saw the woman on her knees. He saw the red between her fingers. He saw Gregory standing over her like a man admiring a dog that had learned to sit. Theodore said nothing. He looked away. He cut another piece of steak. And then, a detail so small that only a camera would have caught it. When Priscilla finished and stood, she did not push herself up the way a tired woman rises from a floor. She moved in one fluid motion, knees, hips, spine aligning in a single vertical line, shoulders setting square, chin leveling to the horizon. The movement took less than a second. It was the way a person stands when they have been trained to get up fast in places where staying down means dying. Theodore's fork paused halfway to his mouth. His eyes narrowed. Something flickered behind them. Not recognition, not sympathy, just a crack in the wall of indifference he had built around himself. Then the crack sealed. He chewed. He swallowed. He forgot. But his body remembered. That night, during his ghost walk at 2 a.m.,
German diagnostics team scanned software layers no ordinary mechanic could touch. No solution.
Slowed as he passed the east corridor and caught himself listening for the sound of her mop on the marble below. The third humiliation was private, but it cut deepest. Gregory called Priscilla into his office the following Monday. He sat behind Theodore's spare mahogany desk, a desk that was not his, in a room that was not his, wielding authority that was borrowed. He folded his manicured hands and spoke as if he were reading a medical diagnosis. "I am reviewing your position, Irving. Your performance is below standard. Your appearance makes guests uncomfortable. Your presence in this house is, how do I put this, incongruent with the environment Mr. Callahan expects." Incongruent. He used that word like a scalpel. What he meant, what they both knew he meant, was that her skin was the wrong color for the wallpaper. "You have 1 week to demonstrate your value. If you cannot, and we both know the odds, I suggest you begin looking for employment elsewhere, somewhere more suited to your background." Priscilla stood in front of that desk and felt every word land, not on her skin, deeper, in the place where she kept the things she did not show anyone. She said, "I understand, sir." She turned. She walked out. She made it 15 steps down the empty hallway before her back found the wall and her eyes closed. Her breathing changed, shorter, sharper, the pattern of someone fighting something inside their own chest. Her fingers wrapped around the old watch, squeezed. And in the silence of that hallway, a voice surfaced from 8 years ago, a voice roughened by desert dust and radio static. Colonel Harold Brennan, standing in a field hospital with blood on his boots, gripping her shoulder. "Irving, you are the finest soldier I have ever commanded. Don't you ever forget what you are." Priscilla opened her eyes. She unclenched her jaw. She straightened her spine. She picked up the mop leaning against the wall, and she went back to work. The first sign that something was wrong about Priscilla Irving came from a falling picture frame. Tuesday night, 1:15 a.m. Priscilla was mopping the second-floor corridor.
And beneath it all, hidden under the estate like a secret shrine, was Victor Langston's underground garage.
Long, rhythmic strokes, head down, invisible as always. Behind her, a gust of salt wind pushed through an open window and knocked a framed photograph off the wall. A heavy frame, silver, glass front. It fell fast. Priscilla did not look. She did not turn her head. Her left hand released the mop, swung behind her body, and caught the frame 6 inches from the marble floor. One-handed, clean, no fumble, no hesitation. She hung it back on its nail and returned to mopping without breaking rhythm, as if the interruption had been no more remarkable than a fly passing through her field of vision. She did not know the hallway camera had recorded everything. Theodore Callahan watched the footage the next morning in his study. He rewound it 3 times, frame by frame. The reaction time was under 0.4 of a second. She had not looked. She had sensed the motion, calculated the trajectory, and intercepted, all while facing the opposite direction. Theodore had employed professional bodyguards for 20 years, former Secret Service, ex-military contractors, men who trained 8 hours a day. None of them moved like that. He leaned back in his chair, pressing his thumb against his lower lip. "Who are you?" he murmured to the frozen image on the screen. The question went unanswered. He closed the laptop and said nothing to anyone. The second sign came 2 days later, and this one was harder to ignore. The estate security team discovered a malfunction in the northeast perimeter camera. The feed had gone dark overnight. 2 technicians stood in the monitoring room, arguing about wiring. Priscilla walked past the open door carrying a stack of fresh linens. She glanced at the screen. One glance, less than 2 seconds, and stopped. "That camera is not malfunctioning," she said quietly. "The lens has been coated with black aerosol spray from the outside. Check the drainage channel directly beneath the mount. If you find boot prints, size 11 lug sole pattern, someone accessed your perimeter wall within the last 24 hours. The 2 technicians stared at her. A cleaning woman had just performed a tactical security assessment in 9 seconds. Priscilla realized what she had done. The mask slipped and she saw them seeing her. She dropped her eyes immediately. "I am sorry. I was just guessing." She shifted the linens higher in her arms and walked away quickly, her footsteps faster than usual.
A celebrity automotive genius from Dubai charged $250,000 for a personal inspection. No solution, Victor spent over $4 million. And all he got was click.
But the lead technician, a former police officer named Dawkins, checked anyway. He walked the northeast perimeter with a flashlight. Beneath the disabled camera in the soft earth of the drainage channel, he found exactly what she had described. Boot prints. Size 11. Lug sole. Fresh. Less than 36 hours old. He reported it to Gregory Ashford. Gregory told him to increase night patrols and said nothing else. He did not ask how a maid had known what to look for. He did not report the breach to Theodore. That night, Thursday, 2 days before the attack, Priscilla did not sleep. She sat on the edge of her narrow bed in the basement room, the boiler humming behind the wall, and pulled a black leather notebook from the false bottom of her suitcase. The pages were filled with small, precise handwriting, not the penmanship of a woman who scrubbed floors, but the notation of someone trained to document hostile environments. Inside, a complete layout of the Callahan estate. Every door, every window, every camera angle, blind spot, and emergency exit. She had mapped the entire property. Not in the last 2 days, not after the camera incident, but starting from her very first week of employment. Methodically, silently, the way an intelligence operative secures any location where she sleeps. She turned to a page near the back and circled a position in red ink. The second-floor storage closet, 12 steps from Theodore's master bedroom. Beside it, she wrote 2 words, blind spot. Why would a cleaning woman identify a tactical blind spot in a billionaire's home? Unless she already knew that something was coming. The last sign happened face-to-face. Friday night, 1:45 a.m. Theodore was on his ghost walk, drifting through the darkened east wing, when he found Priscilla on the staircase landing. She was wringing out a mop, her back to him. He watched her for a moment, the economy of her movements, the way her weight stayed centered, the way her eyes checked the hallway in both directions before she repositioned. "What did you do?" he said softly, "before you came here?" She did not startle. She did not look up. "I have always been a maid, sir." But her eyes, for a fraction of a second, cut toward him with something that was not deference. It was assessment. The look a trained operator gives a principal when calculating threat distance and evacuation angle. Theodore felt it, a cold wire drawn across the back of his neck. He said nothing more. He returned to his room. He did not sleep.
Weeks turned to months, then months became humiliation. Victor flew in engineers from Italy. They disassembled half the car, no solution.
That night. Neither did she. In her basement room, Priscilla sat in the dark, hands on her knees, listening to the house breathe above her. The watch ticked on her wrist. Outside, somewhere beyond the northeast wall, a car engine idled for 11 minutes and then drove away. She heard it. She counted every second. Tomorrow night, she thought. She was right. Saturday, 1:51 a.m. Priscilla was mopping the second-floor east corridor when the house told her something was wrong. Not a sound. An absence of sound. The low electronic hum of the security panel went silent. Not malfunctioned, disabled. There is a difference, and Priscilla Irving knew that difference the way most people know the difference between rain and a gunshot. She set the mop against the wall without letting it tap the marble. Her breathing changed, slower, deeper. 4 counts in, 4 counts out. A pattern trained into her muscles in places where oxygen management meant the difference between extraction and a body bag. From the landing, she looked down into the main foyer. Moonlight cut a pale rectangle across the marble. Crossing that rectangle, 1, 2, 3, shadows that did not belong to the house. Black tactical clothing, balaclavas, suppressed pistols held low in ready position. They moved in a staggered column. Point man, 2 meters, second, 2 meters, rear guard. Military spacing. These were not burglars. Burglars do not carry suppressed weapons. Burglars do not clear rooms in combat geometry. These men had been sent to kill someone. Priscilla's pulse did not spike. It dropped. 62 beats per minute. Fear was a luxury she had been trained out of long before she ever picked up a mop. 90 seconds, maybe less. The master bedroom was at the end of the west corridor. The 3 men were clearing rooms east to west. She ran. Not the way a maid runs, she ran the way a shadow moves. Balls of her feet, spine low, arms tight. She reached the master bedroom in 8 seconds. Door open, bed empty. Theodore was on his ghost walk. She scanned the hallway and saw him, standing at the far end in silk pajamas, staring out a window at the black Atlantic, completely unaware that 3 armed men were 40 meters behind him and closing. She closed the distance in 4 seconds, seized his wrist, and pulled him through the nearest door. The storage closet. The blind spot she had marked in her notebook weeks ago. She shut the door, pressed her body against it, and clamped her hand over his mouth. "Don't move." Theodore chose to be exactly who he had always been. "Why is a black rat like you dragging me into the dark, as if I were one of your kind?" He shoved her hand away, wiping his mouth with disgust. "Sewage hands on my face! You lure me into a dark room to rob me? People like you always have a price." His voice was rising. Each word a signal flare fired at 3 men with guns. Priscilla leaned to his ear. Her whisper barely disturbed the air. "There are 3 armed men in this house. They are here to kill you. If you raise your voice one more time, we both die in this closet. I am asking you, not as your maid, not as a black woman, as the only—"
Nothing. Victor watched from the shadows as experts circled the vehicle like priests around a cursed god. Each promised answers, each failed.
"Only person between you and a bullet. Be quiet." Something in her voice, the absolute stillness of a person who has delivered that instruction in rooms where the bodies were not hypothetical, touched something animal in him. He shut his mouth. 3 seconds later, footsteps stopped outside the door. A hand tested the knob, turned it halfway, held. Priscilla pressed her palm flat against the wood. The man outside breathed twice. The knob released. Footsteps moved on. She had less than 4 minutes before the return sweep. She pulled the watch from her wrist and placed it in her breast pocket, the way she always did before an operation. A ritual, the separation between the woman and the weapon. She opened the door and stepped into the dark. The first man was in the master bedroom. Priscilla took the chrome hanging rod from the closet, hooked it under his chin from behind, and torqued sideways. He dropped in 4 seconds. No shot fired. The second heard the sound and came through the door fast, muzzle up. She was already beside the frame, palm strike to the wrist, gun spun away, elbow to the temple. He collapsed against the wall like a coat falling from a hook. The third was the problem. He came from the staircase, weapon raised, sweeping with discipline. He saw her. She saw him. 2 meters of air. He fired. The suppressed round punched the wall 6 inches from her head, plaster dust erupting like white breath. She dropped low, rolled left, came up inside his reach. Electrical cord from her apron wrapped around his gun wrist, twisted until bone geometry forced his fingers open. She caught the falling weapon, ejected the magazine, and drove the empty grip beneath his jaw. He went down hard, skull meeting marble. 3 men, 86 seconds. Not a single bullet fired from her side. Priscilla wiped the plaster dust from her cheek and walked back to the closet. Theodore was on the floor, knees to his chest, staring up at her as if she had stepped out of a world he did not know existed. "You are safe now," she said. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. She strapped the watch back onto her wrist, the weapon put away. The woman returned. Then she picked up her mop and went back to work, as if nothing had happened. But through the doorway, Theodore stared at 3 unconscious men bound with knots no cleaning woman would know how to tie, and felt something crack open inside his chest that he could not close again. The police arrived at 4:17 a.m., then the FBI, then a forensic team that dusted every surface the 3 men had touched. By dawn, the Callahan estate looked less like a home and more like a crime scene from a television show. Except the yellow tape was real, and the blood on the hallway carpet was real, and the 3 men zip-tied on the marble floor were very, very real. Priscilla Irving stood in the corner of the kitchen, arms folded, head down, wearing the same uniform she had worn all night, now flecked with plaster dust she had not bothered to brush off. She had given her statement to a local detective in 11 sentences. She did not volunteer details. She did not explain techniques. She said, "They broke in. I heard them. I stopped them." And then she asked if she could finish mopping the east corridor. The detective stared at her for a long moment and then walked away shaking his head. But FBI Special Agent Dawson did not walk away. He was crouched beside the 3 unconscious men, studying the way they had been restrained. He ran his finger along the cord wrapped around the first man's wrists, a specific pattern of loops and cinches that he had not seen since his joint training rotation at Fort Bragg 6 years ago. He checked the second man. Same knots. Third man. Identical. He stood slowly and turned toward the kitchen. "Who restrained these men?" he asked the room. No one answered. Gregory Ashford, standing by the counter in a hastily knotted robe, gestured vaguely toward the hallway. The cleaning woman. She said she found them." "She did not find them," Dawson said quietly. "She neutralized them. These are tactical restraint knots."
The sound became poison. At corporate meetings, he dominated billion-dollar negotiations. In boardrooms, senators waited for his
Military grade. Level 3 combatives. The person who did this has had advanced close quarters training. Significant advanced training. Every eye in the kitchen moved to Priscilla. She did not look up. That should have been the end of it, but it was not. Because Theodore Callahan, wrapped in a cashmere blanket in the living room with a cup of tea he had not touched, could not stop seeing the same image behind his eyelids. The woman stepping out of the dark hallway, 3 men on the ground behind her, not a scratch on her body, telling him, "You are safe now," with a voice as level as a surgeon's. And the watch. That battered, worthless, cheap little watch that Gregory had mocked in front of the kitchen staff. Theodore could not stop thinking about the way she had removed it before the fight. Carefully, gently, as though it were the most valuable thing she owned, and put it back on afterward. People do not treat cheap watches that way. People treat medals that way. He made one phone call, then another. By Tuesday, a private investigation firm had delivered a sealed file to his study. Priscilla Irving's public records were almost non-existent: a social security number, a New York driver's license, 2 years of employment at the estate. Before that, nothing. A blank wall. As if she had been manufactured 3 years ago and placed into the world without a past. But the watch had a past. Theodore had seen the case back on security footage, zoomed in, enhanced, and there were characters engraved into the steel. A serial number, military-issue designation. He passed it to the investigators. The file that came back was 17 pages long. Most of it was redacted, black bars over black bars. But the pieces that remained were enough to stop Theodore Callahan's heart. Sergeant First Class Priscilla Irving, 4th Military Intelligence Battalion, United States Army, enlisted at 18, served 12 years. Specialty, counterterrorism operations and high-value witness protection. 14 successful missions across 3 continents, 3 commendations, 1 Bronze Star. The Bronze Star citation was partially unredacted. East Africa, 8 years ago. A hostage crisis at the American Cultural Center. 12 U.S. civilians held by an armed militia for 72 hours. A 6-person extraction team led by Sergeant Irving breached the compound under cover of darkness. Irving sustained a through-and-through gunshot wound to the left shoulder during extraction, but continued operating. She carried an unconscious hostage on her back across 400 meters of open ground under active fire. All 12 hostages recovered alive. Theodore turned to the hostage list. His eyes moved down the page, name after name after name, until they reached the 8th line. Charlotte Callahan, age 20, volunteer teacher, daughter of Theodore Callahan. The file slipped from his hands. It fluttered to the carpet and lay there, pages splayed open like a broken bird. Theodore Callahan, a man who had not cried since his wife's funeral, a man who had built a wall around himself so thick that 22 staff members could not find a single crack, put his face in his hands and wept. The woman he had called a black rat. The woman whose hands he had called sewage. The woman he had ordered to kneel and scrub wine from a rug with her bare fingers while 12 people laughed. That woman had carried his daughter, his Charlotte, his only child, the last piece of Eleanor he had left, on a wounded shoulder through 400 meters of gunfire. And she had never said a word. Not to Charlotte, not to Theodore, not to anyone. She had walked into this house 2 years ago, picked up a mop, and disappeared into the invisibility that this place demanded of people who looked like her. Theodore sat in his study for 3 hours without moving. The tea went cold. The sun came up. The house woke around him. Footsteps, voices, the sounds of a world continuing. And he heard none of it. He heard only one thing, repeating in his skull like a wound that would not...
His handshake. But in his own garage, he was powerless. And powerlessness, to men like Victor, feels like death, so he became obsessed.
Not close. His own voice, in the dark of a closet, calling her a rat. And somewhere below him in the basement utility room, Priscilla Irving sat on the edge of her narrow bed, pressing her thumb to the face of a watch that had survived a war and did not know that the man upstairs had just discovered who she was. Gregory Ashford learned that the assassination had failed at 6:14 a.m. when Spencer Callahan called from a burner phone and said 2 words. They missed. Gregory stood in the garden, dew soaking through his polished shoes, and felt the ground shift beneath his life. 3 professional contractors, men Spencer had paid $200,000, had been taken down by a cleaning woman. 11 months of planning, forged documents, disabled cameras, carefully constructed alibis, undone by a woman with a mop and a cheap watch. He needed a new plan before Theodore's investigators followed the money. Spencer provided one. Not a bullet this time, something quieter, Something that would destroy Priscilla first, remove the witness, and finish the job through the courts, through the will, through the slow, respectable violence of inheritance law. Within 48 hours, the tabloids had the story. Tuesday, Billionaire's Black Maid, savior or schemer? Wednesday, Black Maid gold digger? Cleaning lady has her eyes on the Callahan fortune. By Thursday, cable news, podcasts, social media, everywhere. Anonymous sources described Priscilla as unusually close to Theodore. Unnamed staff claimed she had been spending time in Mr. Callahan's private quarters. The comment sections wrote themselves. Classic gold digger, save his life, steal his wallet. These people always find a way to climb, each comment a small stone. Together they built a wall around Priscilla, higher than anything Gregory had ever constructed with his cruelty. Thursday night, Priscilla sat in her basement room reading every comment by the cold blue light of her phone. Her expression did not change, but her hands shook, not from sadness, from rage, the kind that lives in the marrow, the accumulation of every clutched purse, every locked car door, every room where the air changed because her skin preceded her. She threw the phone against the wall. The screen cracked. The comments kept scrolling. She picked it up, looked at the watch on her wrist, and whispered, "You did not quit in the East African desert. You will not quit in a basement." But Spencer was not finished. The tabloids were noise. The real attack came from inside. Friday night, 11:45. Gregory laced the night shift security coffee with a barbiturate dissolved in cream. Undetectable. Effective within 20 minutes. By midnight, 3 guards were unconscious at their posts. Spencer entered through the northeast gate, the same gate the assassins had used, climbed the stairs, and entered his uncle's bedroom with a 9mm pistol purchased with cash from a private seller in Queens. Theodore looked up from his book and saw his nephew, the boy he had taught to ride a bicycle, the young man he had sent to college, the last family he had left, holding a gun with both hands to keep it from trembling. "I am sorry, Uncle Ted." Spencer's jaw was tight, eyes wet. "Sign the new will, everything to me, or this ends tonight." Theodore looked at the gun, then at Spencer's face, Eleanor's jawline, Eleanor's eyes, the cruelest resemblance. "I loved you like a son, Spencer." "Money does not have feelings, Uncle." The gun steadied. From the doorway, a voice. "Put the gun down." Spencer spun. Priscilla stood at full height, shoulders squared, hands open, cleaning uniform, unarmed, the most dangerous thing in the room. Spencer laughed, brittle, half fear.
By the end of the week, the battery was replaced. Starter motor rebuilt, fuel systems flushed. Electronic modules reset.
"Maid? What are you going to do? Mop me to death?" Gregory stepped from behind the door. Still dirty, still showing up where she does not belong. Priscilla did not look at Gregory. She looked at Spencer. Her eyes held assessment, distance, angle, weapon orientation, trigger finger position, processed before Gregory finished speaking. "You keep calling me dirty," she said, voice low and absolutely still. "But the dirtiest thing in this house has always been your soul, Gregory. And you, Spencer, you hold that gun like a man who has never fought for anything in his life. I have fought in places where boys like you would not last 60 seconds. Spencer raised the gun toward her. She stepped left, off the muzzle line, closed the distance in one stride. Right hand struck his radial nerve, fingers opened, gun dropped. Left hand caught it, ejected the magazine, racked the slide. Spencer was already on the floor, legs swept, knee pinned between his shoulder blades. Under 3 seconds. Gregory lunged. She heard him before she saw him. Without releasing Spencer, she drove her heel into Gregory's shin, caught his wrist, twisted until the joint locked. He screamed. She guided him down beside Spencer. 2 men pinned, 1 gun disassembled. 8 seconds. She looked at Theodore. He was sitting upright in bed, sheets bunched in his fists, staring at her with an expression she had never seen. Not contempt, not indifference. He was looking at her, truly looking, for the first time. "You are safe now." Same words, same voice, but Theodore heard something he had missed before. A tenderness buried so deep beneath discipline that it surfaced only when the danger passed. His voice cracked. "I am sorry." Priscilla held his gaze for 2 seconds. Then she looked away, because if she held it longer, the wall inside her would come down, and she was not ready for that. Not yet. FBI. Agent Dawson arrived 20 minutes later with handcuffs. Spencer Callahan, attempted murder, conspiracy, solicitation of contract killing. Gregory Ashford, accomplice, assault, criminal conspiracy, workplace discrimination. As Gregory was led past Priscilla, he stopped, turned, opened his mouth to speak. She looked at him and said nothing. Her silence was louder than anything he had ever heard. The next morning, a man arrived unannounced. 71, gray hair cropped to regulation. Civilian clothes, but everything about him said uniform. Colonel Harold Brennan, retired, 4th Military Intelligence Battalion. He had recognized the operational signature in the news. 3 hostiles neutralized with improvised weapons, tactical restraints, 0 casualties, and driven 4 hours from Virginia. He found Priscilla in the kitchen washing dishes. He stopped in the doorway. She turned. 8 years of silence collapsed into a single moment. Colonel Brennan straightened, brought his heels together, and raised his right hand in a slow, precise military salute. "Sergeant Irving, you remain the finest soldier I have ever commanded." Priscilla, who had not flinched when a bullet hit the wall beside her head, who had not cried when 12 people laughed while she knelt in wine, who had not broken when a man called her a black rat in the dark, dropped the dish she was holding. It shattered on the floor, and she wept. Not from pain, not from relief, because for the first time in 8 years, someone had called her by her real name. Theodore Callahan called a press conference 3 days later. Not at a hotel, not at a corporate office. At the estate, the same living room where Priscilla had once...
And deep down, Victor knew this was never really about the car. It was about the one thing money had always protected him from: failure. Then one rainy Thursday, a storm rolled over Los Angeles, and with it came a blow no one important would have noticed.
Once knelt on the floor scrubbing wine with her bare hands, while 12 people laughed above her. 200 journalists filled the room. Cameras lined the back wall. Theodore stood behind a podium he had never used in his own home, wearing a suit that did not fit the way it used to, because the man inside it had changed shape. He did not talk about the assassination attempt. He did not talk about Spencer. He talked about Priscilla. He projected her military service photograph onto the screen behind him. Sergeant First Class Priscilla Irving in full dress uniform, bronze star pinned above her left pocket, eyes forward, jaw set. The room went silent. 200 people stared at the image of the woman they had called a gold digger, a schemer, a black rat, standing in the uniform of the United States Army. Theodore read from the citation. Counterterrorism specialist, 14 missions, 3 commendations. The East Africa hostage extraction, 12 American civilians rescued, Sergeant Irving wounded in action, carrying an unconscious hostage across 400 meters of open ground under fire. Then he said the name. The 8th hostage on that list was Charlotte Callahan, my daughter. A door at the side of the room opened. Charlotte Callahan, 28 now, flown in from Brussels overnight, walked to the podium, took Priscilla's hands in hers, and could not speak for nearly a minute. When she found her voice, it broke on every word. I spent 8 years looking for the woman who carried me on her back through gunfire. I never knew her face. I never knew her name. She was in my uncle's house the entire time, mopping his floors, and no one thought to look. Theodore stepped back to the microphone. His hands gripped the podium. His voice was raw. This woman saved my daughter's life. She saved my life. And while she was doing it, I called her filthy. I called her a rat. I am the filthy one, not her, never her. He paused. The room held its breath. If this world calls her dirty, then it is this world that needs to be cleaned. Silence. Then applause. Slow at first, 1 pair of hands, then 10, then 200, rising through the room like something that had been held underwater too long and was finally allowed to surface. Spencer Callahan stood trial 4 months later. First-degree attempted murder, criminal conspiracy, solicitation of contract killing. The evidence was overwhelming. Recorded conversations from the burner phone, bank transfers traced through shell companies in Delaware, Theodore's own testimony delivered with the quiet precision of a man finally using his words for something that mattered. Spencer wept in the courtroom, begged forgiveness. Theodore looked at him and said, "I forgive you, Spencer, but the law does not." 25 years to life. Spencer was led out in handcuffs, passing within 3 feet of Priscilla in the gallery. He did not look at her. He could not. Gregory Ashford received 15 years. Conspiracy, accomplice to attempted murder, workplace discrimination. When the bailiff let him pass the gallery, his eyes found Priscilla. For 2 years he had looked down at her. Now she was seated and he was the one being led away. The geometry of that reversal broke something in him that would never repair. 3 weeks later, the Department of Defense held a private ceremony at Arlington. Priscilla was awarded the Silver Star.
Something unfamiliar entered Victor Langston's chest. Fear. Not fear of cost, fear of losing control.
The commendation she had refused 8 years earlier because 2 members of her team had not come home. Colonel Brennan pinned it to her chest. When a journalist asked why she finally accepted, she said, "I did not take it for me. I took it for Corporal Williams and Staff Sergeant Okafor, the 2 who did not come back. I am just holding it for them." That answer ran on every network by evening. 12 words that undid months of tabloid poison. But the real story was not the trial or the medal. It was what happened after the cameras left. Theodore began sitting with Priscilla in the kitchen every evening. Not to give orders, to drink tea in silence. Because silence between 2 people who have survived something together is not empty. It is a language. He asked about her life. The mother who raised her alone in Baltimore. The scholarship lost when her mother got sick. The enlistment at 18. The nightmares that still woke her. Gunfire, the weight of a body on her back. Corporal Williams's face when the light left his eyes. He did not offer solutions or money. He offered the only thing she had never received in that house, his full attention. The recognition that she was a person, not furniture. Priscilla resisted at first. Kindness from powerful men had always come with conditions. But Theodore's kindness had no invoice. He did not want anything from her. He wanted to be near her, because she was the first person in 5 years who made the empty rooms feel less empty. Love arrived like dawn, so gradual that neither could identify the moment darkness ended and light began. One evening he reached across the table and touched the watch on her wrist. She did not pull away. That was the beginning. 6 months later, they married in the garden of the estate. 30 guests, no tabloids. Colonel Brennan walked her down the aisle in dress uniform and whispered, "You deserved this long before today, Sergeant." Charlotte stood as maid of honor, weeping before the vows began. The ceremony took place on the exact stone path where Priscilla had once hauled garbage bags to the service gate in the rain, and 10 steps from the spot where she had knelt to scrub wine from a rug while 12 people laughed above her. The battered military watch now rests in a glass case in the living room, beside her wedding ring. Theodore had the case back engraved, "To the woman who saved everything I love, including me." 2 people at opposite ends of a broken world. Discovering the distance between them was never as far as they believed. That is what the title meant. Not the closet, not the assassins.
Victor slid into the leather driver's seat, pressed the ignition. Click, silence. At first, he frowned. That was all. Machines fail. Batteries die. But after the second attempt, click, and the third, click.
The change was love. Unexpected, undeserved, and unbreakable. Priscilla Irving's story is not about a maid who saved a billionaire. It is about what we refuse to see when we decide that a person's value is written on their skin. Every day you walk past people like Priscilla, the woman who drives your taxi, the man who delivers your groceries, the janitor who empties your office trash can at midnight. You do not see their faces. You do not learn their names. You do not know that the woman mopping the hallway once carried a wounded stranger on her back through 400 meters of gunfire, because you never thought to ask. We build hierarchies out of skin color, job titles, and bank accounts, and then we wonder why we miss the extraordinary people standing right in front of us. Theodore Callahan had a hero living under his roof for 2 years. She cleaned his bathrooms. She folded his towels. She scrubbed wine from his carpet with her bare hands. And he never once looked at her, until she saved his life in a dark closet at 2 in the morning. The real dirt in that house was never on Priscilla's hands. It was in the eyes that refused to see her. Do not let skin decide value. Do not let job titles decide dignity. Do not let poverty hide greatness. The next time someone serves you coffee, opens your door, or cleans your floor, look at them. Not through them, at them. You have no idea what battles they have survived to be standing in front of you. If this story made you feel something, hit that like button. Not for the algorithm, for every Priscilla still scrubbing floors in silence, waiting to be seen. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Someone who has been told they are not enough. Someone whose talent has been buried by the color of their skin or the title on their badge. And if you want more stories about hidden heroes, quiet warriors, and the moments that change everything, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because every week, we bring you a story that proves the same truth Priscilla proved in that closet. The people the world overlooks are often the ones holding it together.
The sound became poisoned. At corporate meetings, he dominated billion-dollar negotiations. In boardrooms, senators waited for his handshake. But in his own garage, he was powerless. And powerlessness, to men like Victor, feels like death, so he became obsessed.
Priscilla Irving, the woman they called a black rat, was a degraded war hero who once carried Theodore's own daughter through gunfire, and she never said a word. She walked into that house, picked up a mop, and let them treat her like she was nothing. Not because she was weak, but because she had already proven what she was worth in places most of us will never see. And that's the thing, Priscilla never needed Theodore to see her. She knew who she was. The Bronze Star knew. The 12 hostages she carried home alive knew. The only people who didn't know were the ones who decided her value the moment they saw her skin. 86 seconds to take down 3 armed men. 2 years, and no one in that house ever thought to ask her name. So here's what I can't stop thinking about. How many people have you walked past and never once wondered what war they survived just to be standing there? What if the person the world overlooks is the one quietly holding it all together? Tell me in the comments, who's the Priscilla in your life? If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe, because the people the world refuses to see, they are often the ones saving it.
A mansion so massive it looked less like a home, and more like a kingdom built to remind the world who ruled. Italian marble floors, crystal chandeliers. Walls lined with art worth more than entire neighborhoods, but none of them mattered the way one did. His black Lamborghini Aventador SVJ. It was more than a car. It was his resurrection. Victor had bought it the week he became a billionaire. The machine represented everything he believed about himself. Power, precision, perfection, and for a year, it obeyed. Until one cold November morning, it didn't. He stopped attending galas, canceled vacations, ignored relationships. He spent hours alone in the garage, staring at the dead Lamborghini under fluorescent lights. Some nights, security cameras captured him standing there in silence, not moving, just staring, as though if he looked hard enough, he could force perfection back into existence, but perfection was gone.